it's me, lil Ragamuffin, and welcome to my channel. Today is a super special knitting edition. We're going to be learning how to make a sock. I've already started this one. I'm just kidding. I didn't make this. I don't know how to knit, and I know absolutely nothing, zero, about what to do with any of this stuff. But I have a lot of followers and supporters and friends who do knit and knit beautiful things. This is the start of a sock, I think. So I've been told. Again, I have no idea. There is a little bit of overlap with sewing and knitting in the fiber arts community. And little backstory, when the canceling came for me, cancel mob, I think it was that overlap that brought a lot of support, initial support to my business and to me personally. And I was taken in to their community, which was amazing, just awesome. And I'm so grateful to know all these wonderful ladies. So what I'm about to show you, this tutorial, is my way of saying thank you to you, my knitters. This is a DPN case. I've been told these are double pointed needles, and I've also been told that this is a super awesome accessory for your knitting. So when it's not in use, now again, if I'm wrong, I don't knit. So you can correct me in the comments if you'd like. I have no problem being corrected or being told I'm wrong or anything. I don't know knitting, but I do know pattern making and I do know sewing, which is why I'm going to show you how to make one of these yourself. And you don't even need a sewing machine. You can do it all by hand if you'd like. Anyway, so the knitting would go in here when you're done. It goes nice and neatly in there. And your loose needle, so I've been told these get lost a lot, goes right in here. It all stays nice together. And it's got these wonderful snaps. Just like that. And nothing comes out. Nice and neat, right in there. So that's what we're going to be making today. This pattern is available in Blocked magazine. You can go there and download it. If you came from there, thank you, and I'm glad you're here. So let's get to the tutorial. You need fabric. You just need a small amount. You're going to be cutting two of these. One for the outside and one for the lining. This is available in Blocked magazine. The link to Blocked is in the description to this video. One for the outside and one for the lining. So you need a pattern piece, you need your fabric, you need your interfacing, you need snaps or buttons or safety pins or Velcro or something to close that. You need thread, you need scissors, and I like a marking pen. What else do you need? You need interfacing. Interfacing is a stabilizing material used to stabilize your sewing project. Clothing, you'll find it in like a button shirt where there's lots of stress being opened and closed on the buttons or snaps. There's lots of different kinds. This one is super lightweight. It's for knit fabrics. It's stretchy. I don't know if you can see the stretch there. I would not recommend something like this. You can see through it. It's probably not going to be durable for this project. This, however, is heavy woven interfacing. It has no stretch. It has no give. It is iron on. So one side has a glue that you put down. See, it's right here. You can see it's shiny. I don't know if you can see that. So you're going to be cutting these little squares out of your interfacing, and we're going to attach that to the fabric with an iron. There is sew-on interfacing. You can get that as well, but I like the iron-on stuff because it doesn't move. In the event you are in a pinch and you need to make something, you don't have access to interfacing, you can cut fabric squares and attach them by sewing them on. That will work almost just as well as the interfacing. It just provides a little extra durability for those snaps that open and close on your DPN case. Okay, so we just talked about the interfacing. Here it is. Here's a close-up right there, so you can see the shiny side. That's the glue. That's the iron-on side, and this is very, very tough. I'm pulling on it and it's not going to rip. That's really good. This is the one I wouldn't recommend, or something of this kind that's really stretchy, thin, see-through. As far as your snaps, so your snaps are going to have one male set So this is the outer snap, and this makes 1. And then you have a female, which it's going to snap into, and then again you need the outer piece. So that's 1 set. So you're going to need 2 sets of these. There are many different ways to apply them. There's hand pliers, as well as I have a tabletop press, which I'll show you when we go to actually put them on. And there's all kinds of different ways to apply them. So whatever's easiest for you, or whatever you have access to, I would go with that. So we are going to start with this one. This is a fun Japanese style characters. These aren't real Japanese characters. They're just pretend ones, but they're fun and they're cute. So here's what we're going to do first. We are going to put our squares on. I already have them on the lining, so I'm only going to do that on the outer one. And to do that, we need our little markings. I want to make sure everything is marked and correct. So I'm going to do this one in regular speed, and then I'm going to do a time lapse. Right, here's a little tip. You fold it into fourths. This is just something I've picked up. This is going to be the center. Oop, these are tiny. So now you have a center. So you fold it in half, you can see that line right there. That line is going to be right on top of that dot. And that is where you're going to iron that on. We got our squares. Just going to iron those on. It's a good idea too, in between your sewing steps, to press the fabric and make it nice and crisp, especially for something like this. I usually skip ironing as much as I possibly can. I hate it. I despise it. It is not fun work. So I try to skip that when I can. But for this, it actually helps keep everything in order. And this is an awesome marker. If you guys aren't, wait, I'm not on camera. Hold on. If you don't have one of these and you are marking on fabric, this is beautiful. This one is a disappearing ink side, and it's a mark be gone. So this one is air soluble, this side, so it'll disappear in the air. This one is more permanent. It has to be washed off with soapy water. So this I use all the time. Like, I am constantly buying these because I mark everything, and I'm always running out, mostly because the purple end. I do use the other one often as well. You can mark this with anything really, a pen or whatever you have on hand. So again, we're just going to line these up on, make sure the sticky side is down, centered. I've made a few of these so I can kind of eyeball this. But if I were you, I would definitely be making sure that it was centered, because you don't want your snap to go on and then have it be in the wrong spot. And if you're making a buttonhole, you definitely want these in the correct spot. So that just gets ironed on there. And we're going to hop over to my machine, and I'm going to sew it. If you would like to hand stitch this, you know, any type of stitch will probably work. If this is just for personal use, if you're not selling these, like these would actually be awesome at craft shows. So if you guys are interested in making these and you're knitting, and it would go really well at your booth. So if you're going to be hand stitching, this is the seam allowance right here. So if you made these marks, you can even do this if you're not very, if you haven't been sewing very long, and this helps to mark your fabric with your seam allowance. I know some people do that. It's not every machine has guides for every single seam allowance out there, and some don't have guides at all, which is absolutely ridiculous. So you can mark these on both sides if this helps you. That's why I've put that there. Those dotted lines, that is your seam allowance. What is a seam allowance? If you're not familiar with sewing, seam allowance is the space in which your seam, this is the negative space. This is going to be your seam. So this is the usable area. This is what gets caught up in the seam. So this is how much space you're allowing for your seam. Okay? So we're going to step over here. All right, so this is my sewing machine. I am very bad at remembering upkeep on my things, which is horrible for the amount of time that I do so. I have no light here. But let's get rid of my toys. My little armadillo. So my machine is set to a straight stitch, and I have it on length 4, which I sew a lot of knits. So 4 is my longest length. You're probably going to want more like a 2.5 or 3, something that's not as long as a 4. That's the length of your stitch. So again, if you're not familiar with sewing, but you have a machine, this one is very basic. It has 0 bells and whistles. It is not computerized at all. Everything is changed by hand. So yeah, down here are my seam allowance guides. My 5/8 is right here, which lines up with the marking that I just made on the fabric. So I'm going to use those guides to sew straight through here. We are going to backstitch. What is a backstitch? A backstitch is a locking stitch. So you're going to go forward, you're going to go backwards, and then you're going to go forward again over the stitches. What it does is it locks the stitches so that it doesn't come undone. You can skip that at the very top if you'd like, since we're going to sew that later. If you're crossing over your stitches, this is a little tip, it saves time, skip the backstitch. But if you're new to sewing, I recommend backstitching at every start and stop point. So we are going to line this up. My backstitch button's over here. So we're going to go 3 stitches, backstitch, and then just go all the way through. Backstitch at the end. This is the part where you could stop because we will be connecting the 2 pieces and it's going to cross over right there. You do not need to backstitch there. That crossing of the stitches is your backstitch. It is the locking stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that over here as well. And I'm going to do that on my lining. There we go, 5/8, line it up on my 5/8. I'm going to go in, I'm going to go back, and then we're going to go forward. Did you see that? All right. Come to the end, you're going to back it up, then you're going to go forward. Lift the presser foot. Lifting the presser foot relieves the tension, and then it's easier to pull your threads out. I have a nice little cutter here. Most machines do. So there you go. Your front, your main piece is now ready and can be set aside. Now the lining. The lining we're going to do one side completely all the way through. The other side, we're going to leave a spot. We're going to leave an opening. Still 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeters. If you're one of those weirdos that uses the metric system, I forgive you. Okay, so on this side, at the bottom edge, this is folded in half. Okay, so this is folded in half. Your bottom folded edge is going to be open. We're going to leave a 1 inch open there. So what I like to do, you can either mark that so you don't go past it, or you know where to start. I just use my plate as a guide. So the back of it is lined up here, and that's where I'm going to start. That's going to give me enough room. That's going to be the hole that we flip it, because we're going to sew this inside out. So that's going to be the hole which we use to flip it. So here we go. We're going to start 3 or 4 stitches, back stitch, watch it go backwards, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go forward. We're going to go back over those stitches, right up to the top, and we're going to back stitch again, locking everything together. Okay? Whoop. What do we have? We have our lining is all done with the hole right here that we left open. And this is our main piece. I'm going to flip this right side out. And here's a cool trick. So I've clipped the seam allowance away from the corner. That's to reduce the bulk in the corner so that it folds in nicely and has a nice crisp edge to it. So we're going to fold this over like that. I'm going to hold on to that corner, and then I'm going to turn it out. And look how nice and clean that comes out. Like, that's like super awesome. So we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to take it, I'm just going to fold it over, just even with the stitches. And then I'm going to hold it down while I flip it. And it comes out nice and neat. If for some reason your corners don't come out nice and clean like that, you can use a straight pin and just gently go into the seam and work the fabric out very gently, because you don't want to pull the stitches out, because that'll disrupt your sewing on the inside. So there you have that. Once your outer fabric is right side out, you can press it so the seams are nice and flat and good and crisp. And we're going to slide it inside the lining. We're going to match up these side seams and pin it in place. When you pin it, notice where your seam allowance is sitting. Like, I like to fold it over, one to the right and one to the left, so they're like opposite each other, and then line up the seam. You can even feel it. Like when you do that, you'll be able to feel it. They kind of interlock to each other. And it makes for a flatter seam for, again, less bulk, because some places you don't want there to be lots of bulk. So you can use clips here too if you have clips. I do not use clips. I use pins. So I'm going to pin that in place all the way around the top. Something else you could do if you wanted to is open the seams up flat. So that means like that. So wide open, completely flat, both of them, and then they will lay flat together. Like that, nice and open. You'll see that in a lot of other tutorials for various sewing techniques and patterns, especially with cottons. I still like to go with the right and left, the opposite. It's helpful when you're sewing. Because you can feel that actual where they meet. So there you go. We're just going to pin that. And then we're going to sew around the top. We're going to sew all the way around the top. We're not going to leave any open spaces. It's going to be completely closed up. And to do that, we're going to start in the side seam. It's always nice to find a place to hide your beginning and end stitches. It just makes for a cleaner, more professional look. I'm going to take this piece off. This is called a free arm. Most machines, if not all machines, I haven't seen one without it, have a free arm. It just pulls right out. It opens this up so you can work in a circular or in the round circular motion. Yeah, so here we go. So we're going to start here. I'm just going to go all the way around. 5/8, just like before. So we're just going to line up our seam, or line up the raw edge of our fabric on our guide. And we're going to backstitch, and then we're just going to go all the way around. And remember, when you come to your other seam, just make sure that they're opposite directions or wide open. So even if you have to pause and take a minute, resituate it, that's okay. You're not in a hurry. This is not a race. When you come to the end, I'm going to go through the original backstitch, and then I'm going to backstitch over it again. So through it, and then back. There we go. Now the fun part. We are going to flip this right side out. So remember this hole? This is what we're going to use to turn this right side out. You're going to reach in. You're going to go all the way to the furthest corner. So that's going to be up here. I'm just going to gather it up. And I'm going to use my fingers. I'm going to grab it and push it through. And you can see all the right sides are coming out now. And once this is all the way out, we're going to lay it flat. So your lining's on one side, and your main fabric is on the other side, working all that out. And we're going to close up the hole. This is the hole we just pulled everything out of. I'm going to take all the seam allowance that's there, push that right inside. We're going to sew it straight across. If you're super picky and you know how to do an invisible hand stitch, you can go through and do that there. Otherwise, no one's going to see this. I would just use a very close color fabric, or thread, like I'm using black thread on black fabric. So it is going to be not noticed at all. So we're going to back stitch again, all the way through. And you'll notice I am sewing as close as possible to the edge of this fabric. And just go right up to the edge as close as you can. And there you go. Now that's done. So now we're going to put the lining inside the main fabric. So that's simple. We're just going to shove it in there. All the way around. And I'm going to press this. I'm going to iron this so it is nice and crisp. You can skip that if you don't want to iron it. And if this is just for personal use, if you're not selling these do make really awesome craft show add-ons to your booth. Like if you are a knitter that sells your knitting, other knitters are going to be like, oh, this is amazing. I love that. That's a great idea. And they will buy them. So, okay. If this is for personal use and you're not going to sell it and you're not putting snaps on, you could be done right now. This could be it. Your project is finished. I don't want snaps. I have safety pins. So you're just going to attach the safety pin here on this side and then one on this side after you put your project in the DPN case. Now, if you are going to continue, what I'm going to do is top stitch around here. So I'm going to press this real quick. Just iron it, pull the seams out, make sure it's nice and crisp, and then I'm going to top stitch around for a nice clean finish. All right, so now I've went and pressed this, gave it a nice crisp, clean finish with the iron. One little thing I noticed that I do, and some of these things I do just out of habit, so I don't even know to tell you or share it, is as I'm ironing, I gently slide the seam allowance so it's a little off, so that the lining is underneath. So you just kind of slide it and then iron it. That just creates like a cleaner on the outside, a cleaner finish, so you don't see that lining sticking up. That's just something I naturally do. It's part of garment sewing and I've been doing it forever. So yeah, there you go. So now I'm just going to top stitch around here. You can totally skip this step if you don't want to top stitch. My top stitch is going to be, I'm going to reset my machine to the longest length. I'm going to keep it centered here with the needle, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to start in the corner or on the side seam, and I'm just going to use my presser foot because this is a 1/4 inch on my machine. I'm just going to use my presser foot as the guide, and I'm going to go around and just sew. That is a top stitch. The long stitch length creates a nice long pretty stitch. This is a great way to add a professional look, especially if you're selling these things. And back stitch again, done. The last step here is to add your snaps. If you're doing buttons, you go ahead and add your buttons. If you're not doing anything, your safety pins or whatever, Velcro, you're just going to add your closure. So I'll show you how to do the snaps since that's what I'm using. And then we will have at the end of the tutorial, there will be a time-lapse version where you'll get to see me sew the entire thing beginning to end without the extra instructions. Okay, so we are about to put the snaps on our DPN case. I use this awesome hand press. I got it from Kim Snaps, and it comes with 2 dies. Well, the dies are separate, so you get the press and the dies to go with your snaps. And I wanted to show you this because it's amazing. I think this model I don't remember what the number amount, 98 or something like that. I can't remember, but it's around $100. They do have a hand press. I have arthritis, that's why I don't knit because I just can't do it. So I opted, instead of the hand press, to use instead of the handheld press, to use this tabletop press. Now they do have a hack on their website to turn the handheld press into a foot pedal tabletop press. It's pretty cool. It requires some building, but I recommend it if you are not willing to spend $100. That is another option. And their handheld press is awesome as well. I just have this one because of my own personal needs, and it's just easier. Like all day long, you're just like, that's it, you know. Okay, so we're gonna finish our DPN case now with our snaps. I'm gonna put the markings on there using my awesome pen and the pattern piece. So since this is our seam allowance, which I went over earlier, I'm gonna line up the corners with the dotted dashed lines. Okay, and then this becomes the place where I'm going to mark. So I'm gonna put a little hole there. And I'm going to mark that space. Okay, once that's there, I'm going to take my scissors. When you use the snaps, you should have an awl, which is just a pointy object, basically, to push through the fabric. I'm using my scissors. I, again, always like to find what I have on hand instead of spending extra money. So I'm just going to punch these through both sides, all the way through, front and back, all the way through. This isn't going to be your guide for your snaps. It's also going to be how they get through the fabric, because this is pretty thick. I just give it a couple good twists so you have a nice hole. I don't know if you could see that. It's there. And I'm going to do the same on this side. So again, lining up the edge of the fabric along the dotted lines here, and the same thing with the top. And you should be able to feel in there too, where you put that interfacing is right there. So there's my hole. I didn't even use my marking pen on this one. Just go right in there, give it a good twist. If you have an awl, that'll just go right through as well. All right, so I have my holes. This fabric does not have a right or wrong side to it. This one did. This is upside down because it's a directional fabric, so I chose this to be the front. Depending on what you're using, what kind of fabric you're using, you might want to take that in consideration. So this has the female snaps on the right side and the male end of the snap on the back side. So that's what I'm going to do here too. We're going to take, each set has its own die. So this is the male side of the snap. So I need 2 of these. That's the male side. Let's see if you can see that. And that goes right inside here. And it gets screwed right into the top of the die press. So screw that in. And we're going to need 2 of these. 1 for each side, that'll be the back. And 2 of the caps. I believe they call them caps. They're just the pretty side, the stuff that you're going to see, the flat little bit right there. So we need 2 of these, and we need 2 for the other side. So I'm going to stick this in my hole here. Whoops. That goes in the hole. And then this end goes down on here. And I'm just going to snap it. I'm going to press down, give it a good press. It's in there. The thing with the snap is this piece, and this happens a lot. Like I see a lot of people have this issue. See that little spike? If you don't press it hard enough, whether you're using the handheld press or the tabletop press, that little spike needs to get squished. That's what's happening. It's getting squished down inside this piece. It gets squished down inside here. And if it's not squished down far enough, it leaves a little bit. And it's too high up and it won't snap properly. So you really got to make sure you give it a good press there. So we're going to put that on that side, grab a new one. And we're still on the male end here, which would be the wrong side, the back, if you had directional fabric of some sort. So now that's in there. I'm going to give it a nice tough press. And there it is on there. Now I'm going to switch my dye out because you need a different dye for the front or the female snap. Put that in there. Okay, and grab my female snaps. This is the front. Oh, come on. I need two, so I got two, 1, 2. One of them goes right inside here, sits in there. Now I'm going to take the cap piece again. Now this side is done. On the reverse side, here we go. One in there, just like that. And the same thing, just gonna press it together. Once that comes out, you can test it right away. There it is. So I'm going to do the other side here, and then we're done. That will be it. You are ready to use your new DPN case or make a bunch of them and sell them at craft fairs. Or give them to friends. These are great gifts. All right, this one is done. There you go. I'm going to go and make another one now, and I will do that at a time lapse, and that will wrap up this tutorial.